Zooey Mama, how's it going, everybody? I'm here to talk about the very exciting new card coming to Marvel Snap. Many people expect this to be one of the best cards of the season. I am talking about Phastos. He's coming to Spotlights on June 25th alongside Spider-Ham and Corvus Glaive. This could be a very good week to open Spotlights. Phastos is a 3-cost, 3-powered card with the awesome ability on reveal, give each card in your deck either -1 cost or +2 power. Okay, so he's like an Okoye on steroids. He's just buffing things in your deck. He's going to make some of those cards cheaper. He's going to make some of those cards have 2 extra power, where something like Okoye only adds 1. So this could really just buff up your deck like crazy. It's got a couple really good homes, so I'm going to go over some awesome decks I've put together for Phastos. I'm going to go over his key synergies, the pros, the cons, and just give my final ratings on the Spotlight Week and Phastos himself, if I think he's going to be worth chasing after with your very precious resources or not. So let's get into it. Let's start by looking at some of Phastos' best synergies. First up, we've got Silver Surfer. Okay, for obvious reasons. I mean, Phastos costs 3, so of course Surfer can buff him, but it's much more than that. Surfer decks like running Brood. Brood, you're happy to get -1 cost or +2 power, because if you give Brood +2 power, the Broodlings get that +2 as well. So Phastos would actually be adding +6 power to Brood. Surfer decks also like Sebastian Shaw, same thing. He's happy to get the -1 cost, but he's also happy to get the +2 power. So Surfer decks just have so many good targets, and then Surfer buffing Phastos at the end is just icing on the cake. Next up, we've got Okoye. Okoye has never been super strong, but as we found out with Baron Zemo, it only takes one more card that works in the same theme, does something similar, to make an archetype. Okay, once Baron Zemo came out, we finally had Mill archetype. It's a real thing. It's a decent, viable deck. Maybe once we get Phastos, we have just this power-up archetype where you play America Chavez, you play Forge, Okoye, maybe even Nakia alongside Phastos, and you're just buffing up cards, and you may not even need something like Silver Surfer for that. And then lastly, we've got something like Magic. Okay, Phastos, yes, he's buffing cards in your deck, but you still need to draw those cards and then play those cards. So he could synergize really well with other cards that draw, or something like Magic, which gives you 1 extra turn, in which you have 1 extra turn to draw another card that's buffed up and that you can get more value out of Phastos for. Let's look at the good and the bad for Phastos. We will start with the good as always. Again, he's like Okoye on steroids, okay? Okoye just adds 1 power, but then you can bring Phastos in there, even on top of Okoye, right on curve, to just buff up cards even more. You're going to draw some cards that are +3 power, or have +1 power and -1 cost if you did Okoye into Phastos. I mean, it could get out of hand really quickly. Some cards are happy to get the minus cost or the plus power, as I mentioned. Okay, most cards like minus cost. Like, that's just a free win. And with Phastos, he has no minimum cost. He could hit 1 cost cards, make them 0 cost. Okay, he does not have a minimum. But Surfer decks, as I mentioned, like the minus cost or plus power. So they just love anything they get from Phastos. He can be triggered multiple times. Maybe hit him with Absorbing Man right on curve. Maybe hit him with Grandmaster, or even bounce him back to hand with Beast. Play him again. Just keep buffing up your deck like crazy. This can obviously be a win condition. Okay, if he's the one hitting your Sebastian Shaw, hitting your Brood, he may be adding just as much power to your cards as Silver Surfer would. Okay, maybe you didn't draw Surfer, but your cards were buffed up because of Phastos, right? He's this win condition that comes down early as opposed to Surfer who comes down on the last turn. And then there's that question, does he make a new archetype? A lot of people thought Baron Zemo wouldn't. They said Mill is not going to be a thing, and it was. Okay, again, it just takes one more piece to complete the puzzle and make it a real thing that we see, and that's very exciting potential. Now to talk about the bad, okay, the cons for Phastos. Well, if you don't play him on curve, he may not be very good. If you play him right on turn 3, he probably feels good. On turn 4, okay, it's 1 turn late, but you can still get turn value. once you hit turn 5, 6, or 7, if it is a 7-turn game, he's coming down as a 3-3, right? Maybe you draw one card that got the buff, but you may not even want to play that card. I mean, he really needs to come down as soon as possible. If you miss his curve, it feels bad. You need to draw and then play the buffed cards. Okay, so again, if you played him on turn 5, but your turn 6 draw was like Sarah, and you're not playing Sarah on turn 6 in the Surfer deck, well, he was a 3-3, even though you got one draw out of him. Okay, he doesn't just give you the power right away. You do need to draw, and you do need to play the cards, so they need to be worth playing. But there is RNG in how he's buffing them. If your deck doesn't really care about the +2 power, it just likes the -1 cost, well, if he happens to just give more cards +2 power, then it doesn't feel so great. And then he does get countered by mill decks. If you don't have any cards in your deck, he's not buffing anything, okay? So if your opponent is getting rid of cards in your deck, or they're even stealing them with Baron Zemo, they might steal your buffed up cards. That's going to feel a little bit bad. He also gets countered by Darkhawk, and this is going to be a real problem, okay? Darkhawk is going to sometimes play Black Widow. That means you miss a draw. That means even if you got Phastos on curve, you're missing one of the draws and you miss value. Or maybe you draw some rocks because they played Korg or Rockslide. Well, Arishem comes out next week, and once Arishem comes out, who doubles the size of your deck, everybody and their mom is going to be playing Arishem or Darkhawk to counter Arishem. So we're just going to see a lot of Darkhawk around, and that's bad for Phastos, so he may feel a bit weaker than he actually is in the first week or two that he is out, or at least for as long as Darkhawk is really popular to counter the Arishem meta. Here's just my friendly reminder to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you have not already, because not only do we cover every single new card release in Marvel Snap, but this upcoming Tuesday, the night that Phastos comes out, I'm going to be streaming right here on YouTube at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time, which is 9:30 p.m. Eastern time, and I'm going to be doing some giveaways, okay? I've got a big announcement I'm excited to share with everybody, so we're going to have a big, awesome stream. We're going to have a bunch of people hanging out, and you might just win some free stuff, so stop by on Tuesday. Now let's talk about Phastos' floor and ceiling. Phastos at his reasonable worst, or his floor, is that he doesn't do anything, okay? Either you played him like on turn 6, where he was in your hand on turn 6, so it's just a 3-3, or you played him a bit earlier, but you don't actually draw or decide to play the cards that he buffed, okay? So it's on reveal, just buff cards that you don't play, right? Whether you drew them or not, you just didn't get any of that value, because Phastos himself doesn't have any bonus value. It's all on cards he's hitting. He is relying on you drawing and playing those other cards. So in terms of his floor, you know, it's not really viable. 3-3 is pretty bad. It's obviously not competitive. It's not the worst floor we've seen, but it's bad. It's not good. In terms of Phastos' ceiling, his reasonable best that you will see somewhat often, every now and then in game, it's that he's going to buff 3 to 4 cards. If you do have magic, you get 7-turn game. You could draw 4 cards that were buffed up, and they were great targets for his buff, and you decide to play them, okay? Or maybe, you know, it was only 3 extra turns, but you drew another card or got Jubilee or something, and you're playing these cards. I mean, this could go crazy, because you have Phastos, who his stats are 3-3. If he did hit a target like Sebastian Shaw, he just made Sebastian Shaw from a 3-4 to a 3-8, okay? He would make Brood from a 3-6 to a 3-12 if he hit them with the +2 power. And then, you know, maybe he hits a card like Gladiator, who goes from being a 3-8 to a 2-8, right? Maybe he gave Gladiator the -1 cost or something. So it's hard to know the exact value, because some cards he's given the minus cost, some cards he's given the +2 power. But there will be games and there will be decks you're playing him in that are just built to take maximum advantage of all of his buffs. And when that happens, the stats are just going to go crazy on your side of the board. So that would be overpowered if you could do that every single game consistently. But where is Phastos on average? Well, I think on average, you are going to play him on turn 3 or turn 4. You basically draw half of your deck by turn 3. So it's like a 50% chance that you play Phastos on curve, like right on curve, which is awesome. So if you do play him on turn 3 or maybe turn 4, but you draw decent cards for turns 5 and 6, and they're buffed up by Phastos, and you can play them. Well, he's going to seem like a card that's a 3/3, but he's producing some extra value for maybe 2 other cards that were in your deck. Okay, maybe he's hitting that Shaw. He's turning Shaw, extra +2 power. Shaw buffs himself up again, goes from a 3/4 to 3/8. Maybe he's, I don't know, just hitting like a Luke Cage that goes from a 3/3 to a 3/5. I mean, some cards aren't going to get crazy value, but he's just going to buff stuff up. And I think on average, you will get him down on turn 3 or by turn 4. There's over a 50% chance that you do that. And when that happens, it's going to feel good. Regardless of what the buff is, it is going to feel nice. So I think that's where he is on average. Let me know if you disagree. On average, you think he's going to be better than this or worse than this, right? The average is the biggest guessing game we're playing. Where is Phastos' consistency? Now let's jump into some of the decks I've built for Phastos. First up, very simple Toxic Surfer deck list. Okay, now I took out Red Guardian, who I've been playing in here, and I swapped in Phastos. Now this deck works because we know this deck works. It's been pretty competitive and fairly popular in the meta for a while. So we know Phastos will see good results here. Now the question is, does Phastos actually make this deck better, right? That's a genuine question, and I think so, because Brood is a great target to hit with Phastos, okay, whether it's the minus cost or +2 power. Same thing with Sebastian Shaw. Maybe Sarah you get at a discount. Absorbing Man can be great as well. I mean, you can play Phastos into Absorbing Man, which means Absorbing Man has another target now in addition to Brood, Hazmat, Silver Surfer, Ironheart. But also, if you played Phastos and he gave, Absorbing Man plus power, maybe you then do Brood into Absorbing Man, and Absorbing Man makes like 6 power Brood things. I mean, it could go really crazy. You could even be fancy and do Wong into Phastos. That's a little late game. I don't think you want to do that too often. But we know this is a good deck. We know Phastos fits well with most of the Surfer package, so this is probably going to be the most popular and most consistent Phastos deck. Next up, I have a Surfer deck that's a bit more experimental. Okay, I'm really leaning into Phastos kind of being the final piece of the puzzle for this power-up archetype. So I've got power-up Surfer here. We've got Chavez, Forge, Okoye, Nakia, and Phastos. Okay, that is 5 cards that can power up other things in your deck. And then we even have Absorbing Man as a potential 6 card if he did copy Nakia or Phastos right on curve. And so we still have Surfer to buff things up. We can still buff up the Brood, the Absorbing Man combo, right? The classic stuff. But instead of Sarah in here, we just got Black Panther, okay? If we're buffing stuff in our deck in our hand, maybe Black Panther gets 2 or 3 buffs. That puts him at a 5/12 or 5/14. You just slap him down on turn 5. Surfer decks usually can't go so big in one lane that easily off one card. And then turn 6, you just play 2 3-drops, right? And you're buffing up your Shaw. Your cards are all buffed up. You got some discounts from Phastos, so your deck may be cheap enough even without Sarah. I'm really excited for this list. I really think you can kind of mix and match Surfer decks with this kind of power-up new coming archetype. Last up, I've got power-up Pixie, okay? Pixie decks, I think, are going to go absolutely crazy with Phastos. I mean, sometimes you already just cheat out insane stuff. If you play Pixie, you get lucky. You have Wasps, 0 cost, go to, say, Doctor Doom. Okay, that feels amazing. You draw like a 0 cost Doctor Doom. But remember that if Phastos gives something minus cost, then if it was a 1 cost card, there is no minimum. So let's say Nico's 1 cost went to Doctor Doom. Well, Doctor Doom costs 1. Phastos could hit that Doctor Doom and make him cost 1 less. That's a 0 cost Doom. Okay, that means Jane Foster can still draw a Doom even if he was 1 then 0. Maybe your Yellow Jacket traded with Better Ray Bill, that's Jane Foster. I mean, this is just going to go crazy, okay? And with this package, Thor or Better Ray Bill, they're very happy to get a Phastos buff, especially Better Ray Bill. If you give him like that +2 power, you then double his power up. I mean, it's just going to go nuts, okay? So this is a fairly standard Pixie list, and these decks, they just go big. If you get Pixie on curve, sometimes you get lucky and you can steal big cubes. If you don't get lucky or your draws are bad, you just retreat for 1. Okay, so it's kind of combo heavy. You don't have the highest win rate based on game basis, but you can still have a really nice cube gain rate. Now let's break down this Spotlight week. So we've got Phastos alongside Spider-Ham and Corvus Glaive. In terms of token value, it's okay, it's good. Phastos, Series 5, he's the new card. Corvus is also Series 5, that's a full 6,000 tokens. Spider-Ham is only Series 4, okay? So really that's the only one that's, under max value. But this is pretty typical. The new card's 6,000 and they try and match it up with one Series 5 and one Series 4. In terms of being competitive, I think this is a good cash. Spider-Ham, he's pretty good. Not amazing, but he's pretty good. Corvus is really strong. Okay, now Corvus isn't the most flexible card, right? You're obviously playing Corvus in discard, but discard is still pretty good. Even though Hela received a bit of a nerf, you can still go Corvus Hela decks or Corvus, even just other discard archetypes, right? He's great with Apocalypse. He's great if you're just trying to discard swarms. He's just a really strong card, okay? So regardless of how Phastos performs, this is just a pretty good Spotlight week in terms of the cards being competitive. For the variants, I think they're okay. I'm not huge on these variants. My favorite one here is the Corvus Glaive. The Phastos one, it's all right. I actually really like Phastos' base art. I think his base artwork is great. It's a bit bigger. He's like popping out more with his big mallet, and there's more lightning everywhere. So I actually prefer just the base art. Spider-Ham has so many good variants. I'm excited to see how this one looks when it's animated, but it doesn't look crazy to me. So really it's just Corvus carrying this 2-star rating for me. Now to give my final ratings and predictions for Phastos himself. Well, in terms of being fun, I think he's pretty fun, okay? Even if he mainly just sees play in, let's say, a Surfer deck and a Pixie deck, he's going to have these moments where you play him right away and you're going to say, ooh, what am I going to draw next, right? And even if you know what you're drawing next, you're going to say, what buff did he give them, right? You're kind of questioning, you're like anticipating the next draw. Is he giving me +2 power to Brood or something crazy? Is he giving me a 4-cost Sarah I can play right away? It's kind of exciting, and if he does end up creating his own archetype, that adds a ton of fun, a ton of value for your collection. In terms of being flexible, he's okay. I don't think every deck loves him. I mean, he's a 3-cost card that can be tough competition. But again, you really want him right on turn 3. So some other decks that are just focused on heavy synergy or doing some specific line may not have time to fit him in. Or if their cards don't benefit much from just +2 power and they would only benefit from the -1 cost, it may be a bit risky. Okay, even if you drew 2 cards and played them and they had the +2 power, then Phastos is just like a 3/7, right? You really want cards that can take extra advantage of it. So he does need somewhat specific decks, but there's a couple to go around, so I think his flexibility is okay. In terms of being competitive, within the archetypes, he fits, okay? Within the decks that I've talked about, and maybe there's 1 or 2 more, where he has a good setup, he's got good synergy, I think he is competitive, okay? I think he is solid. I could see him being a staple card in Surfer decks. I could see him being a staple card in Pixie decks, where you go watch some YouTuber or streamer on Twitch playing a deck with Phastos, and if you don't have them, you'd be like, what can I replace Phastos with, right? Because you're going to see some good decks that do use him as a staple card, is what I believe. So while he's not the most flexible, I think he's flexible enough where he's going to fit a few different play styles, and he will add good value. So overall, my thoughts on Phastos are that he is worth picking up, okay? Whether you plan to buy him with tokens, or if you're gonna go for opening him through Spotlight caches, hopefully you have 4 keys saved up to be safe. I think he's worth it. I think it's gonna be worth chasing after, and I think over time he will get more synergy in the game. He's gonna be just a nice card to have in your collection, pull out every now and then, try out some more, and I think he's fun for building your own decks. If you do like to create your own decks, archetypes, again, I showed a Pixie deck with Thor and Better A Bill. I mean, there's more stuff you could do with Black Panther. Like, there's a lot of fun decks you could cook with him. So that's my thoughts on Phastos. Again, I'm going to be playing him the night he comes out on stream. I'm going to be playing all kinds of decks. So if you're unsure if you want him, stop by the stream, watch some other creators play him, see how he's performing, see how the decks people are playing him in are doing, and see if he's going to be worth it to you. So let me know what your thoughts are of Phastos in the comments down below, what his best decks and synergies are. Maybe I missed some obvious ones you think he's really good in. Let me know, and until then, stay positive. I'll see you next time.